Sir, you'll need to wait until everyone else has deplaned. That's all the flight attendant said to the elderly man in seat 24A. His reply came not in protest, but in the quiet form of a nod. His cap, well-worn and faded, rested lightly atop hair turned the color of ash. A small carry-on sat beside his feet. His coat sleeves were slightly too long, hiding the tops of hands that had done far more than they'd ever told. And in his eyes, quietly scanning the narrow cabin, sat decades of watching the world unfold. Nobody gave him much thought when he boarded. Most were preoccupied with seat assignments, overhead bins, and group boarding announcements. The gate agent had barely looked up when she scanned his boarding pass. Seat 24A. We're almost done boarding, sir, she said with perfunctory politeness. He simply tipped the brim of his blue cap. The threadbare embroidery read USAF retired, the last two letters slightly frayed like the end of a sentence that had been whispered too many times. He stepped onto the jet bridge, taking the incline with care, not because he was weak, but because he was deliberate. Every step he took seemed to carry more than just his weight. A history, perhaps. When he reached the aircraft door, the flight attendant gave him a rehearsed smile. Can I help you with your bags, sir? No, thank you. I can manage. His voice was calm, firm, unhurried. He made his way down the aisle with quiet determination. Other passengers barely noticed him. The cabin buzzed with the usual shuffle, the tap of fingers against phone screens, the click of seatbelts, overhead compartments closing with soft thuds. A child clutched a plush dinosaur. A businessman grumbled about the lack of legroom. The old man moved through it all like a whisper of a forgotten era. He slid into seat 24A and tucked his modest bag beneath the seat in front of him. No need for the overhead bin. Everything he needed, he carried with him. Hello, said the woman beside him in 24B. She glanced over her magazine. He nodded politely. Ma'am. Then he turned toward the window, not to admire the clouds, but to rest his eyes on the endlessness beyond the glass. His reflection stared back, worn and weathered. The plane pushed back. Safety instructions lit up on screens and echoed through speakers. He didn't watch. He didn't need to. At 36,000 feet, people leaned into pillows, opened laptops, sipped sodas, and passed the hours with movies and meals. But the man in 24A? He simply sat. Occasionally he tapped the armrest with two fingers, softly, rhythmically. A habit. Or a memory. A child a few rows ahead whispered, Mommy, he's so old. Honey, that's not polite. The mother hushed, then smiled apologetically toward the back. The old man didn't flinch. Maybe he didn't hear. Or maybe he'd heard such things too many times to bother reacting. His gaze never left the sky beyond the wing. A flight attendant paused at his row. Would you like something to drink, sir? Just water. No ice. She brought it. He drank slowly. No earbuds, no movies, no small talk. Just the sound of engines and silence. When the plane began its descent, he straightened in his seat. Not a dramatic movement, just a quiet adjustment. He reached up, pressed the brim of his cap slightly tighter. As the aircraft landed and taxied, the usual commotion erupted. Passengers unbuckled too early. Overhead bins burst open. People crowded the aisle, each with somewhere urgent to be. But not him. He remained seated, hands calmly on his knees, waiting. A man retrieving a duffel from the overhead compartment paused. His eyes caught on something stitched into the old man's jacket, an insignia, almost hidden. Not the kind seen on Veterans Day banners. No, this was different. Discreet. He hesitated. Their eyes met. There was no smile, no greeting. Just an unspoken acknowledgement. A nod. Then the younger man moved on. Seat by seat, row by row, the cabin emptied. The sounds of bags rolling, sneakers squeaking, families reuniting. The aisle cleared. Still, the man in 24A didn't move. In the cockpit, Captain Aaron Whitaker was finishing his post-flight checklist. 27 years of flying commercial routes, and he still walked through each line item as if lives depended on it, because once they had. Everything good? His co-pilot, First Officer Diego Morales, asked. Whitaker didn't answer right away. He was staring at the passenger manifest on his tablet. A name had caught his attention, Colonel Thomas Reeves. He whispered, Tom Reeves. Morales looked over. Someone you know? Whitaker's voice dropped. My dad told me about a Colonel Reeves. Used to fly rescue missions in Vietnam. Said he saw him once drag out 4 wounded under mortar fire. Morales blinked. That's not the kind of guy you forget. No, it's not. The last passenger had exited. The flight attendants were gathering stray cups, checking sea backs. One, a young woman named Rachel, came up to the cockpit. All passengers are off, except the gentleman in 24A. He's waiting like you requested. Thank you, Whitaker said. Then after a pause, closed the door. The aircraft grew still, as if the cabin itself were listening. The mechanical chaos of minutes ago gave way to the soft breath of auxiliary power and the groaning of cooling metal. Captain Whitaker stood. He removed his cap, adjusted his jacket. His fingers, usually so steady, trembled as they touched the latch of the cockpit door. He opened it. The sound was subtle. A hiss. A click. The moment air balanced between two worlds. Rachel looked up as he stepped out. Everything okay, Captain? He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed down the empty aisle. Then he walked. Slowly. Deliberately. Each step purposeful as though approaching something sacred. The man in 24A sensed it. Maybe it was instinct, honed from decades of watching his back. Maybe it was the rhythm of the boots. He turned from the window. Their eyes locked. Captain Whitaker stopped before the seat. The old man stood, not hunched, not frail, but upright, back straight, spine aligned with decades of discipline. His cap remained on. His presence filled the aisle. Colonel Reeves, Whitaker said quietly, my name is Aaron Whitaker. My father was Lieutenant Daniel Whitaker, 75th Tactical. He said you trained him. Reeves studied his face. Time folded. Daniel Whitaker. Called him Danny. I remember. Quiet. Smart. Fearless. Got him through his first tour. He didn't make it home from his second, Aaron said, his voice catching. But he told me if I ever met you, I'd know what real courage looked like. Reeves looked away, then back. His voice was steady. Your father was a good man. One of the best. Whitaker stood straighter. Without a word more, he lifted his hand and gave a full military salute. Flawless. Respect rendered not to rank, but to legacy. The old man returned it. No hesitation. No rust. 2 perfect salutes. 1 bridge across generations. The flight attendants watched, motionless. Miguel, the other steward, quietly slipped off his uniform tie. Rachel wiped at her eyes. Then both men lowered their hands. Thank you, sir, Whitaker said. No, Reeves replied. Thank you for remembering. They walked together down the jet bridge, Whitaker carrying Reeves's small bag, despite his protests. My dad would have kicked me if I let you carry this yourself, he said. Reeves smiled. At the terminal, something unusual had occurred. Word had spread. No announcement was made, yet everyone near the gate had paused. Baggage crews stood still. A janitor removed his cap. A toddler stopped mid-tantrum. Standing at the gate was a younger man in uniform. Air Force Blue. Captain's insignia. He stepped forward and held out a sealed envelope. With compliments from General Harrison, sir. Reeves accepted it. Inside, a handwritten note, yellowed photograph. For young men in front of a chopper. One circled in faded ink. Beneath it, he made it out because of you. Reeves didn't cry, but his fingers trembled. He nodded to the young captain, to Whitaker, then turned and walked away. No grand send-off. No applause. Just dignity. The moment ended as quietly as it had begun. But Flight 732 would never forget. Not the crew. Not the silent watchers. Not Captain Whitaker. And when Rachel finally asked, Sir, who was he? Whitaker replied, someone who flew into fire and came back with the broken. Someone who brought angels home. There would be no trending hashtags. No media coverage. Just memories. Because sometimes the loudest salute is silence. And real rank? Real rank is remembered. Not displayed. Earned. And never, ever forgotten.